I'm trying a different camera setup again tonight, so bear with me. If this one looks okay, if I look good in it and I'm happy with it, I think we'll keep it. But in the meantime, it's working, which is good. And the live is showing well, and the stream looks like it's coming through nicely, and everyone can hear me. Whiskey Boy, SM Yan, Robert Akers, Muzzman, thank you so much all for tuning in. Now, there's a couple of things I want to touch on tonight. First off, and this can't be a really big stream because it can't be. I've got other things I need to get done. But there's something I want to touch on tonight, and that was the monogram. Now, you've seen some of it online already. If you go to our smws.com.au/news, or just go to the homepage and navigate to Whiskey Wires, you'll see that we've got some things happening at the Society, which are being announced today and over the next few days, which is the monogram. It's the monogram to connect us all as a membership organisation, as a place that, a whiskey club that we can all come together and enjoy. And that's what the monogram eventually is going to represent, or already represents, I should say, and we're going to see changes coming through, slowly but surely coming through. And if you flip to the second last page in Outturn, page 18, if you get a physical copy, then you can play along at home. Otherwise, you can do this on a digital copy on your PDF. You've got here the monogram to connect us all. It shows a bit of the history of the SMWS, an evolution of our identity over time. And now we've moved completely to the full monogram. It says on the page, we've often said that some things change, some things stay the same. While we're continuing to bottle only the most rigorously panel-approved single cask strength, full-flavoured drams on Earth, you're going to start seeing some subtle visual changes coming along. So it adds another level of transparency. You're going to start seeing the label as well. There is an update coming to the front label of the bottle. It's very much the same as the current label design. It's a slight tweak. It's a slight rejigging of where words, and it actually tidies it up really nicely. If I'm being honest, it keeps everything nice and tidy on the front label and makes it even clearer to understand where everything sits. Right now, I like the current design, and that's my Blackberries Bubblegum and Bougainvillea bottling there, the 112.49. That was one that I picked up from Christmas Outturn. So I love the current label, but at the same time, there is some subtle changes coming through which represent what we're about and add another level of full transparency to our mission statement, if you like, so you can see what exactly you're buying and what you're enjoying. Sam, I've still got to hit you up. Sam IIBP, I've got to hit you up. I keep meaning to. I'm sorry, and we'll chat about doing some doing a live together, but also doing some beer matchings and things like that. And I think you're always bubbling away there, making some interesting things. Lockie, good to see you. Underground Spirits, good to see you. Nick Husek, good to see you. Keegan Emmons, good to see you. Whiskey Editions, Just Jamming, Whiskey Saurus, Samurai Guy, audio is good. Thank you, SMN. Benoit, good to see you. Whiskey Saurus. You know what? This is really great to be back, like I said. And I'm just talking, if you've just tuned in, I'm talking about the monogram. I'm talking about how there's some changes coming. So where that logo currently sits in the bottle is going to vanish. It'll say Scotch Malt Whisky Society down the front here on the label, on the far side of the label. And the monogram will be part of our identity, which you can spot the full monogram in the Outturn, which just came out, which is coming out this Friday. This is this Friday's Outturn, so you can spot it in there. Yeah, it looks funky and fun. I'm ready, mate. Sam, I'll hit you up. I keep meaning to. It's just, life gets in the way, and then Christmas gets in the way, Whiskey Steens, good to see you. Good to see you, Tim. So thank you. If you like the new monogram, that's great. I mean, it's, what doesn't change? What doesn't change is our commitment to the quality of what we bottle. What does change, however, is our overall focus at the Society is moving way more towards our experiences, our events, and our experiences might be things like in-person events, of course, like our tastings, our masterclasses, our dinners. Speaking of dinners, Burn Supper, 22nd January in Sydney. I'd love for you to be there. It's Wednesday night at the RAC in the ISC room. It's going to be a full haggis whiskey night. There's surprises still to be announced. And there's some events coming up all around Australia. The Melbourne event has sold out. We'll announce another one shortly, trust me. So yeah, that's one of the big changes I want to touch on tonight. You'll be able to read more on our website about that. The second thing I wanted to touch on tonight was, I was actually quite inspired by watching Scott Fitzsimons' live stream from the Oak Barrel last night, because he did a stream last night talking about, and one of the things he touched on in his stream, which was quite a long one. I mean, I try to do it every single day, and I try to punch in 20, 25, 30 minutes, if I can, of just talking about something interesting, taking your questions, focusing really solidly on one topic. He's doing them, I think, every fortnight or every week or every. I'm sure it's more than every month, but he's doing them like once a week or something like that. And there was one, and they're quite long. He did quite along with Joe, is his co-worker at his colleague at the Oak Barrel, and he started talking about the intricacies and interest around new make spirit. Now, I often like last night I talked about the different types of whiskey. We touched on things like blended whiskey and blended malts and single casks and single malts and things, which was a lot of fun. So you can check that out on the YouTube channel if you missed last night's stream. You can check it out on the YouTube channel, which you can go to our website, click the little YouTube icon, or you can just search Scotch Malt Whisky Society Australia on YouTube. You'll find it. And I'd really appreciate you subscribing to the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell next to it as well. So here we have some new make. I'm going to hold that up. Yes, Robert, the current label livery didn't last long. It just did. Look, this was really good, Rob. I think it's a really good design. I think that by the way, what's happening to this part down, this label, is what I would call a redesign. I'd call it just a very, very slight refresh. It just keeps it really tidy. And if I'm being completely honest and completely, I'm saying this not even outside of the society, even just visually, I think it looks so much better than new labels. I think they look really clean, really tidy. A nice sort of like arrangement of where things sit on the label is much nicer. And the same goes for the details of the cask and the details of things going on here. I think it looks really good. But the monogram's going to replace the logo. So, enough about that. I started talking about new make. So, Scotty was talking about new make. And I often, last night I was talking about the differences in whiskey, and I'm going to focus in one of the other basics is new make. So some people might call it moonshine, some people might call it white dog, some might call it pochine, others will call it new make. I'm going to call it new make because I'm not American or Irish. So this is actually Australian new make. It's far easier to get Australian new make than it is Scotch whiskey new make for two reasons. One, we live here, and second of all, there's a lot of distilleries making spirit these days in Australia. And the third reason is it's a lot of Scottish whisky distilleries aren't very forthcoming to give their new make away. They quite protect it because that's their asset. That's the base spirit for what makes their whisky in future. Pardon me. Maybe they'll have the same appeal as paper labels in 20 years. Rob, if you hang around long enough and keep coming to our events, in 20 years' time I'll hold a old design tasting. That'll be fun. No, even then we might be able to dig out some paper labels. You know what? Personally, I don't have any paper labels left at all of my own of that era, and I had a few at one stage, and I've got like actually 1 dram left in one bottle of which is So there you go. It's meant to be opened and enjoyed. Who cares? Okay, so this is new make. This is a new make from Archie Rose Distillery. They also bottled this as a 6 malt new make at 50%. This one's at 68.3 or something like that. Or 64.3. This is straight off the still strength, I think. So, or almost cask strength, or almost like filling strength. It wasn't 63.5. I'd have to check. I think it was 64.3. It was a strange proof. Some of the nonsense I get up to at Archie Rose in terms of picking out spirits and things like that. So this is a single malt new make. The reason why I encourage you as a malt lover, as someone who enjoys flavors in whiskey and discovering what whiskey is, I thoroughly encourage you, whenever you get the opportunity, to nose and taste new make spirit. It's brutal. It's often quite brash. It's sometimes really enjoyable. It's sometimes quite sweet. It's just like whiskey in many ways. It provides an insight. It provides a window into the flavor characteristics of the distillery, into the flavor characteristics of what that spirit might end up being. And I've tasted some marvelous new makes. I'll be completely honest, some marvelous new makes. And I mean things like Ardbeg new make, Glenmorangie new make, Glenmurray new make, quite a few like Scotch whisky new makes that I've gone, and some others as well, which I thought, ooh, that's not really great. I'll be completely honest with you. I thought the new make out of Tullibardine Distillery was almost chalky. It was had a strange aroma to it, almost like floral but chalky note to it. It wasn't undesirable. It was just interesting. It was very weird. And then I've had Ardbeg New Make as an example. It's, of course, it's peated New Make, but it's so sweet. It was so sweet and like almost like nectarines and peaches and apricots. Lovely. Like it's like you learn so much about the actual spirit quality. And Harry from Archie Rose joined. You know what, Harry? We're talking about Archie Rose. Look at that on the live stream tonight, and she's here. So I'm actually drinking Archie Rose New Make right now. I'm having a nose and a taste of it. And this is not just, this is very close to the 6 malt New Make bottle that they did, but it's not. It's 60 something percent, 64.3%. The New Make 6 malt was bottled at 50. So this is natural still strength, natural cask strength, or natural filling strength, I should say. Sorry, straight off the still rather than straight off the shelf. And yeah, so this is thank you, Harry. Good timing. Are you tasting for different things in New Make? Really good question, Whiskey Steens. I am tasting for different things. I'm trying to analyze the flavor just like I would in whiskey. So you get up close to it, and you get your first impression might give you a bit of a top nasal burn. It is quite high proof, and even whiskies that are that proof often don't give that same amount of burn because there's a bit more integration with the oak. They don't burn as hard. So in this case, I do get. I mean, this is quite high. Yeah, I definitely get like a in Archie Rose's case, I get that sweet note. I get that almost like, but I also get like a really sort of like almost rustic farmhouse kind of note in their spirit as well. And I always have. I think they've always had that. Not always, actually. I'm going to say since Withers onwards, which is a bit of a bold claim. There was another distiller working there before Dave was head distiller, and he may have had a different approach to how the spirit was made. I'm sure he did. And this is, and by the way, huge shout out to Joe. He's a marvelous distiller, and I think he's down at Lorenia Estate now. I'm going to get that wrong. Doesn't matter. I'll remember later, and I'll update you. Yeah. So yes, Nick Husek. Yes, he brought the Archie Rose New Make to that event, which I hooked him up with. I think that was that event. I can't remember, but it was yeah. And I'm glad he was able to share some with you because, like I said, we've got a great relationship with Archie Rose. They're a fantastic partner bar. They're a great venue to go and visit. If you're out in Rosebery, even you know what, if you're even near the city, make it your destination. In fact, one of my favourite things to do with Archie Rose is it's the best place to stop over when you're coming back into Sydney. So you get in a cab or an Uber, whatever, from the airport. If you're landing into Sydney, Archie Rose is one stop. You know, it's just there. It's basically next door to the airport, and then you go into town. So it's a great sort of stopover. It's a great place to stop and have a refreshing drink. And I say this without any bias. I still think they make the best gin and tonic. It's like, I'm a whiskey drinker, but I almost always order a G&T when I'm there because they're so crisp and refreshing and lovely. And you can just disappear into a few of those, and they're lovely. Or on the way to the airport. Whiskey Jules joined. Good to see you. Monster Malt. Airport Archie home. Airport Archie home. Yeah, that's a good trip, I'd say. So New Make is quite important. It's a, you know what, some distillers, I've said this before, but some distillers like to think that New Make is 30% of the equation or 20% of the equation, and the cask is 70-80%. Other distillers have said, and no kidding, have said that it's 50-50, that the spirit is just as important as the cask. I would actually, I wouldn't argue with that. I'd say that's very much a subjective opinion. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, I've heard of stories where distillers, or shall I say, whiskey makers, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, have said that the cask is 99% and the spirit is 1% of the equation. The spirit is almost redundant, and it could be any spirit as long as the cask is great. I don't believe in that at all. That can work, but it's very high risk, and you're relying so much on the cask. Whereas you should rely on the spirit and the cask together, whether that's 50-50, 30-70, 28, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, think of Pareto's law. You can have that 80% of the cask, but without the 20, you're still very much incomplete. So the importance of the New Make and understanding what that flavour and what that position does to the end spirit is hugely important. And if I'm to quote Scotty from last night, and to quote Lynn Lark, who he was quoting last night, so I'm sort of piggybacking on that a bit. But Lynn Lark, and excuse my French here, Lynn Lark is the wife of Bill Lark, and many would argue the engine of Lark Distillery for many years. and she was the one who got the Tasmanian whiskey industry on its feet. Lynn, casks are not to be used, they shouldn't be used, as a way to mask a poor spirit. And I've said this before, I've said that using a cask to mask a spirit is a very poor way of making whiskey. And which is why I often see all these distilleries, and I'm going to be completely blunt with you here, I see a lot of distilleries do it in Scotland, but I see even more distilleries do it in Australia, where they invest so much of their time, energy, marketing, and money into casks. And you see this, and they start talking about how, we got these casks, these 200-year-old tawny casks that sat on a Caribbean island for 6 years before being transported to Trinidad for filling for rum, and then we got them 240 years later, and they're ours. It's like, okay, cool, but what are you putting in them? Oh, just the normal full cut spirit that we're taking off the stills. It's like, oh, that's a shame. You know what? Distilleries should invest more time, money, and effort into creating a great spirit. In fact, not to blow too much smoke up Archie Rose, but honestly, if they make a new make that's that good that they can bottle it, and they do, as a 6 malt new make, I don't know if they still bottle it, but they bottled a huge run of them, and I hope they've still got some left, because that was a great product. And it was also very versatile. It was good for cocktails, it was good for just drinking neat. It had so many versatile options. You know what? Here's one for you. New make, ice, and a squeeze of lemon on a hot day. Weirdly fantastic. So anyway, and even a bit of soda. Did someone /you say Exotic Cargo was blended as a new make? SM Yan, I think I did say that. And I need to confirm that, but I believe that to be true, which is very, very unusual. It was a mix of distilleries that were blended at a make level and then casked into first fill Spanish oak sherry casks. I'll get back to that one though. SM Yan, I need to find out that. Either way, it's a very tasty whiskey at the end. Yo, Maddie. Hey, Cal. Good to see you. No notes of urine. You know what? That's a very undesirable tasting note, Cal. If you're getting a urine note, I would say your acidity levels, the acidity levels in the new make are way off. As in your enzymes and your ferments. If something's happened, they're probably at a ferment level that is not good. And often you find that means that it's been under fermented, hasn't fermented long enough. I know the exact tasting note you mean. It's often a really astringent, acidic kind of zesty note that is not desirable in new make, generally speaking. That means that's often ironed out by a longer ferment, which irons out and provides more fruit characteristics and more sort of bready characteristics to the spirit, which is more desirable. Delicious. Truly delicious. That's at 60-something%. Still strength, Archie Rose. You can't buy new make most distilleries. Just for your record, they don't like to sell it because that's their asset. That's what matures their whiskey and creates their product in the years to come. And not all new makes are created the same. I won't say which distilleries, but there are some distilleries, of course, both in Scotland and Australia, where I've tasted some rather terrible new makes, and it makes for not a great spirit at the end. And you see people going gaga over these bottles where the end result is a really expensive release, and you taste it and you go, I'm getting that same flavor profile. Why is that good? It's like, I don't think people are opening these things. I just don't think they are. And if you're not opening them and enjoying them, then what's the point? Anyway, I'm not going to get on a rant. I'm already getting on my soapbox too much tonight. Westwood has a note of urine or BO. Wow, that's quite an undesirable note. I don't know if I've actually, you know what? I think I have tasted Westwood's new make because they did a bit of a tour of their brand. I'm not going to pass judgment. I don't know enough about their spirit. If you get that note, you get that note. It's all very subjective, of course. It's like if I say I get a floral note and you don't. It's like, yeah. Look, like I said, it had to be a bit of a short one tonight. I'm glad I could teach you a few things about new make, a few things about discovering the inner flavors of whiskey, discovering why new make is important. And the more new makes you get to taste, the more you can assess them and work out what's good, what's bad, and what should go into a cask and what shouldn't. And usually, desirable flavors in a new make desirable whiskey at the end. And that's the long and the short of it. And getting secondary opinions on new make, especially if you're producing it, is really important, which is why I've consulted for a few distilleries in the past, advising them on this, on new make and on things like that, which has been really useful for them and useful for me as well. Actually, I was really honoured, if I'm to talk myself up just for a second, I was really quite honoured to be asked to assess 7 different new make styles at Loch Lomond Distillery over in Scotland earlier last year, which was fantastic. And they asked for all of my sensory analysis on all the new make samples. We took about an hour aside just to do it. And doing things like that was a huge sensory training for me, and provided a different set of tasting notes for their team as well. Because let me tell you something, at these distilleries that are super organised and have been producing millions of litres a year of good spirit, they have their own labs on site these days. Loch Lomond have a lab on site where a proper scientific laboratory for assessing new make spirit, for assessing what goes into casks. And they do that twice a day. Twice a day. They also have their own mini cooperage / cask repair site, which means that they control the charring and toasting of the barrels that the spirit goes into. Yes, you can tell I have a huge affinity for Loch Lomond, which is why 112.49 will be in my glass after this new make. I really appreciate you all tuning in. I've got a dash, do apologise, and I'll catch you all tomorrow night. Cheers!